Right. So let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Afternoon. We are very happy to be here at Sankofa Video and Books for another convening, another conversation around another very powerful text. And quite an afternoon we have in store. We're going to spend the next hour and a half in conversation with Nkozia on her book, Play the Game, Hierarchical Assimilation. And that will be followed by a discussion around great Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe, film Sobukwe, A Great Soul, which is going to be very powerful. And I can think of no better way to lead into that conversation with a historical figure than this conversation with a bridge figure from several generations hence, who has done an incredible amount of work for a 632 page book, which is comprehensive in scope. And we're going to get right into it. My name is Greg Carr, and I'm a proud loyal member of the Sankofa family. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our authors. She's a distinguished scholar, entrepreneur, and author committed to sustainable solutions, educational empowerment, and renewable energy, holding a bachelor's degree in anthropology and international development with a concentration in African and Asian affairs. And she's pursuing a master's in anthropological studies while in pursuit of her JD PhD. She spent a lot of time at the Howard University School of Law. She hung out over there this past semester. And I think the first time I heard you talk about your graduate study in anthropology was right here. It was at another author's event that we were talking as well. She has founded both a nonprofit organization, the United Association of Moors, which we're going to hear a lot more about in a moment, the concept of Moor and how that works, and Moorish educational, Moorish curriculum. We're very interested in that chapter on African studies in American context. And also the Nahast Foundation, that's based in Ghana, which promotes academic excellence for youth through international travel, social and wealth empowerment, and for-profit businesses. More CERP, this organization focused on digital equity and sustainable development solutions. There's a lot more you can learn about her at her website. This is for the folks who are streaming as well, www.nkozi-a.com and www.moorsearch, MOORSEARCH.org. And so without further ado, this was a warm welcome, Sister Nkozia. So many questions about Play the Game. I want to ask you to help us understand hierarchical assimilation and the concepts in each of about ideology and culture, the relationship of language to culture and how that's so important. But maybe we should start with first things first. I remember, how many years has this been? It seems like forever ago, and then maybe only yesterday that you were part of a watershed event that took place across the street. I remember that.
Yes.
Tashango and Billy Shaka and his colleagues at the Howard University Middle School of Math and Science went through quite a trauma across the street. And you write about this a great deal. Could you maybe start there, and then we'll go back and forth in time? How you got to DC, and then what happened after? But that middle school moment seems to be very shaping for you.
Yes, I wanted to start with the foundation of my educational experience because Howard University Middle School of Math and Science was the first time that I got introduced to a very Afrocentric curriculum where I met educators who were really grounded in like African history and wanting to teach young people about that. So Mr. Billy Shaka was my homeroom teacher and my history teacher, and he was very militant as a teacher too. So I remember us always having to like greet elders and stand up and say Ashe and all of that stuff. So that was really important, and especially as him being my homeroom teacher, we always had to list out different kingdoms, all of the African countries. We had to know different African inventors, and you don't realize how much of a profound impact that has on you until you leave the nest of that experience. And I remember Billy Shaka telling us when I was in 6th grade, so I'm probably like 10 or 11, and he's talking to all of us as young kids, and he's like, you guys are never going to have this experience of learning who you are again. And that has always stuck to me because going into all of these institutions I go on afterwards, I never got to really see myself in the history books, you know? And so Sankofa has been like a place for me to come to be able to get that history back, especially going into these PWIs. So it was such a profound experience, but then also looking at the administration change that happened at Howard University Middle School as well. It seemed to me, my hypothesis is that once the administration started to change mayors, there seemed to be like a push away from charter schools and
in the city.
yeah.
You talk about Muriel Bowser here as well.
Yes.
Before we get to the political context, this classroom context is fascinating because clearly it informs so much of your work. We see Babaji Akoto in here, everybody from, I mean, you name it, Amos Wilson, everyone's here. These famous Kazi packets. Do you mind talking about this Kazi reading regimen that I don't see going on anywhere in the country?
Yeah.
It's just a rigor.
The Kazi packets were super amazing, super profound. So it was Mbali Shaka's curricula that he created. And Kazi, if I'm not mistaken, means wisdom, correct? Or knowledge?
Kazi, work. You know?
Okay,
in
sorry.
fact, from the 60s, it would say Kazi is the blackest of all.
Yeah. So
yes.
he used to have like these 100+ page Kazi packets of us just going over the same information of our history. Like that was the first time I introduced the Imhotep or Osiris Osiris Set, like all of these different things. We had to annotate each like line, and he would like check it every semester. So we had probably like 4 of them each year or so like that. So it was an amazing experience. And I should have brought it because I still have a few of them to this day.
So okay, so this is fascinating. So I mean, you're Washingtonian through and through. Your analysis of Washington, particularly you talk about the disparities, everything from real estate violence to gentrification to healthcare. You talk about your grandmother and the challenges that she faced and how that translates to your analysis of healthcare. So you definitely Washingtonian, but you didn't come here until you were 11, right? Is that right?
Right.
All right. So, and then when you left the middle school, you end up at one of the, I guess they would say, prestigious high schools in the district. Is that right?
Yes, I went to Benjamin Banneker for a minute, and then I transferred to the school in the fall.
What happened in what were those experiences like? In contrast to this grounding you got.
In contrast, Benjamin Banneker at the time it was at the old school.
Right across. Yeah.
Right, and I felt like that was my first experience of seeing the what do you call it? School to prison pipeline, just off of the infrastructure of what it looks like. When you look at it visually, you can see that there's bars and like it's very strict and rigid. And also, they didn't go too much in depth of African history too, because they still have to like meet what the standards were. Like during the time, I didn't get like the best experience I could have because it was just like going through different shifts with teachers and everything like that. And then when I went to Walls, very much Eurocentric in what they're teaching with AP history and AP world history. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get teachers who, like Mr. Jones, who would teach more so like African history. I had people that stayed to the standard of teaching you about Western education.
One of the themes of this book, which you don't necessarily say explicitly, but it informs the entire thing, you were able to maintain yourself culturally, be very 10 toes down. You have chapters in here about assimilation, or do we have our self-determination? Do we have, I mean, all that's there. At the same time, you excel in these spaces that are profoundly anti-African. So could you talk a little bit about how you did that? I mean, Malefia Sante, who you quoted here a couple of times, he always talks about taking 2 sets of notes, but you didn't just take 2 sets of notes. You maintained who you were, but then you also transcended and you confronted the racism in the spaces, because how you end up in the Air Force,
Right.
And then how do you navigate these spaces?
Well, that's interesting because right before I actually graduated from School Without Walls, I ended up running into a young man, but I think he used to own Children of the Sun, another bookstore that was on the street. So he ended up handing me this book, The Spook Who Sat Next to the Door by Sam Ringley. And that kind of was a confirmation for me to be able to say, yes, I can go into the military and take what I learned back to my community. So I ended up becoming, or I wanted to become a JAG officer at the time. And that was kind of, I thought was the best fit for me, becoming like a military officer and everything like that. But then once I was in that space, I realized how much racism was embedded within. That was the first time I got introduced to the industrial complex of racism, I would say, and in the military context. And so I saw how the military was very much similar to Jim Crow, like they still kept those types of tendencies going in a very microaggression type feel. And also very similar to like slave plantations, the way that they ran and led African young people in the institution. And a lot of times you don't see a lot of African people going into the officer route and the academy route unless they're not direct, so they have to go into like a year training. So there was just a lot of disparities that even existed with getting in. And so once you're in those spaces, you're running into people that may make comments like they've never seen an African person before, they've never seen someone fairly, like, you know, all different types of sort of things. That's more, you know, direct. But then you have to think about on an institutional level when you have a squadron of people that are creating negative implications on your record, which, you know, to follow you forward. So
and you confronted that. I mean, a lot of physical trauma. I mean, I was reading. I was like, wow, this is a serious assault on you. But not just that cultural. And what we're doing is just laying a foundation in many ways, because the analysis that threads through this massive book, all of this work, this prodigious amount of work, really kind of also interweaves with memoir. That's why we kind of start with your life story, and then we get into the theory that you develop and how you apply it and look across the board. But ultimately, you chose not to stay. Can you talk a little bit about how that?
Yes, I chose to leave due to a number of reasons, but I was able to leave medically. So I get to say I was a second lieutenant in the Air Force, but because of the conditions that I had while I was there, and then also having to fight my own, you know, fellow airmen, my squadron at the time of healing, it was just not a conducive environment for me to stay. And a lot of people that are in the military, especially African American women, they do talk about the culture in it. So I decided to part ways after writing a series of memorandums, which I mentioned one, but I have other ones as well that kind of goes through the bias and racism that I experienced, where I'm actually asking them to do some type of audit questionnaire to ask all other women within the Air Force Academy at that time of their own experience, because it seemed to be a pattern of the same experiences we were going through as they separated the few African people, and especially African women that were in the squadron. Probably if there was a class of 1,000, I would say there's probably less than 20 of us in that class, right? Wow. And that's just for like the freshman year and things like that.
So then you, and maybe later on, you know, when we open up for questions, you know, one of the things you, of course, you challenge, you help us understand here, including with citing some cases that were pursuant to how African women wear their hair and how that became part of their background. You know, so we'll talk more about that. But, so then to college and another set of conversations. You talk a little bit about your time at George Washington.
Yes, I did initially go to George Washington, and then that was a whole nother battle and experience with a variety of different things. I remember I took my first anthropology class, biological anthropology, and I had a teacher, can't remember her name, but I just remember her comparing, she had a slide image of Nelson Mandela next to a monkey. And right. There's probably this is a class of 100 people.
78, 79? Wait, no. That's when did this happen?
This happened in 2018.
Yeah, okay, I just wasn't sure. I was like, wow. Yeah. Nelson Mandela and a monkey.
Yeah, and this is a class of maybe more.
Not Matt Gates and
probably
that's all right.
5 African students in the class out of 200 students, and I addressed it to her. I, raised my hand, and I'm basically questioning why did you think this was appropriate? This is an outdated slide. This is obsolete. And she basically is almost crying in front of the class as if I'm saying something wrong. And then I remember it was me and my friend from Morocco, and we're this is crazy. What's going on? And then after class, all of the white students are going to her and saying, "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" And I'm like, what is going on? I was it felt like I was in a whole other world.
The convening of the tears, the criers, which you actually kind of talk about in here as well. I mean, you make clear distinctions between the you melanated. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yes, the you melanated and those who aren't. And in fact, let's talk now a little bit about continuing the conversation we're having. But in these 25 chapters, you spend the first part deeply autobiographical in many ways, but you talk about reclaiming your melanin. What is your melanin, and what part does reclaiming it mean for African people?
Yeah, so the idea around me utilizing that verbiage was I wanted to work on a new dissertation piece where I discuss our concepts around Black and acknowledging ourselves as Black and what does that do to our psyche. And so I kind of want to play around with this, like analyzing race essentially. And when you're thinking about race, it's really about being pheomelanated or eumelanated. Eumelanated basically means you're of a darker complexion. Pheomelanated is more so you're, on the basically like on the white reddish type tint. And so when I'm saying reclaim melanin, I want us to actually dig deep in understanding our history, understanding what does it mean beyond color to understand like where we're coming from, and actually thinking about what are, like, aside of the labels that were given to us from our oppressors, like who are we? Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like that type of concept and reclaiming our power within that, because there is power beyond our skin, but just in our DNA, thinking about how we're able to resist and how we're able to survive to this day and age, right? And the only way that we're able to continue that lineage is like tapping in to who we were, like to get here, essentially.
And who are we in a very broad sense? Like you use the word or the concept of more, but you don't use it the way that most people would recognize.
Right.
In fact, and you challenge the question of language very early on. You talk about language being the key to culture and how, even though we have the English language, there's so much beyond that. So you're grappling throughout this book with language. So when you say us, I mean, who are we?
Right. So I like to utilize the term more for a mixed reasons. So on my grandmother's maternal side, her last name is actually Moore. So I wanted to dig deep as to like what is more, and I realized that more, the word itself, comes up in different cultures in different ways. So you have, for example, Ta Mary, which can relate to the beloved. A lot of people associate Moors with the North Africans and Muslims who are conquering over Europe, or maybe civilizing Europe, and then, but really, when I dig deep into the etymology of Moor, it can relate to love, but actually like light beings, things like this.
The word for love is Mary.
Yeah,
that's right. And Ta Mary, beloved land.
Yeah, so I think that
take it back to Mary Pyramid too.
Right. Oh, also, yeah, meaning pyramid, MER, Mer. So I wanted us to step outside of this racial construct of race, because I feel like kind of similar to what Neely Fuller talks about in his book, that we become victims of racism the more that we ascribe ourselves to the title. So it's looking beyond that, looking up at us as, pure light of and love, and being able to create the institutions and the visions that we have through our imagination and the power of that.
So that really explodes. And you're right that race is not real in this sense. That really explodes a kind of physical description, because you do say beings of pure light. I mean, you take it to a cosmic level in many ways here. And although we're in these physical forms, you don't subscribe to the way that we have been described or narrated or forced.
Right.
So how did you come up with the concept of hierarchical assimilation?
I think going back to this book of Second that's kind of the idea of seeing the main character assimilate, like during that time, like that was his main purpose. And that as a young person, 17 years old, I was like, I can do that. Like,
I can play the game.
I can play the game.
Is that what that's what the title is?
Yeah, because oftentimes I kept hearing that come up in my day-to-day life with people, talking to people, and I know
we
that
all hear it to this day.
Yeah, we hear it like, just play the game, get the salary, whatever, do what you got to do, to survive. But I wanted to challenge that, and it's like, to what end, And so it's just kind of like a wake-up call of like, what does that actually do? And it does strip away your cultural identity. You start to have like some type of blurred lines in between, and especially when dealing with the lack of community that can exist within these types of institutions that are oppressive. So yeah, it came up in the sense of that's what I have been doing or trying to do, but it's still like this duality of getting through it, and especially talking to different elders.
Let's talk about that. And in fact, I see you with the book open and some tabs. I don't know if there's some pieces you want to read or you want to kind of bounce off, or you want to, I don't know, but if you have some teed up, please jump right in. Okay. Oh, good.
Yeah, right. I can read a few paragraphs here, and I brought this page up specifically for my friend in the front that is always a big proponent on eugenics, and we were having a conversation on it and the importance of us talking about it.
Which chapter is this?
This is page 270.
270. Okay, very good. This is for the folks who will be ordering the book who are streaming, because we got a few for sale here. 270. Chapter 12. Right. Medical warfare. Yeah, you got a lot of science here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is actually a piece that I had written when I was 18 years of age, and I was exploring the different types of disparities that exist within the medical system. And so I write, the United States of America is the curator of eugenics, and former leaders such as Adolf Hitler fantasized and implemented a formal plan for those deemed unfit and unworthy for society. It is intentionally addressed that the lack of authentic publications given to the masses impedes melanated people's comprehension levels. It is difficult for them to contextualize the eugenics that exists in various ways. The policies and practices of the white medical community have had an enormous effect on the health of African people since slavery until present day. Adolf Hitler, Germany, and the United States all neglect to address that everyone originated from Africa. And not only that, but the Aryans, or the pure race, were indeed Africans themselves. This contradictory philosophy has been strategically and intentionally planted in the minds of people of color to further divide them and deny their identities. There are currently many attempts at mass genocide through the form of eugenics, however, and fewer people realize this. Most are distracted by the media and the digitized way we receive information. Mankind does not realize that without reading, we are not expanding our minds beyond what is perceived to be factual. The Association for Information Systems, AIS, recognizes the implicit biases that exist in algorithms that will hinder the progression of mankind. The following statement considers the cost of bias. Benefits and damage can result by failure to consider biases in the design and development of AI. Inclusivity and stakeholder awareness regarding potential ethical risks and issues need to be identified during the design of AI algorithms to ensure that the most vulnerable in society are protected from harm. Race is a social characteristic of population, and its usage in the biological system of improving health is an intentional war tactic against minority populations to identify and exclude them from proper equitable access to health opportunities. The racial differences that exist biologically are so to be negligent that researchers have inquired about its potency and relevance as it relates to research studies. And it just keeps going on.
I mean, it's interesting because you and in this way, I'm glad you mentioned Neely Fuller Jr., because in reading this book, there were a couple of other books that came to mind. One, of course, Neely Fuller and Amos Wilson, just in terms of the breadth, the scope, integrating a lot of different studies, empirical studies, all with the seem like twin objective of identifying what we're up against and how it operates, and also posing solutions. Because a couple of chapters later, I think it's chapter 15, The Perils of Technological Advancement, you return to this question of data, return to this question of social media, but then you also integrate Asa Hilliard and talk about ways that we can combat that.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about how you balanced a very broad-ranging critique of the society and condition that we're in with solutions, which you were always very quick to add so that it isn't just a critique, but also a kind of suggestion and recommendation of how we can move forward?
Right. I was very intentional around like wanting to narrate what I believe the problems to be, and especially from reading great people like Amos and Wilson and Asa Hilliard, and even Mariva Annie is like a great one that I would have read later. And then I didn't want to just get stuck on the problems. I wanted to like figure out, so what is the solutions? And this was something that I was thinking a lot about throughout my course. Like, undergrad, essentially, and then that's how I end up coming up with my business and multiple businesses during the time. And so that was the whole idea. And I feel like Asa G. Hillard, he does a really great job of creating a curricula that we can like teach our young people and focusing on that Afrocentric piece. And I realized the profound impact that had on me as a kid, that I felt like it inspired me to want to continue to learn, that I felt like I could embed in other young people. And I felt that was my mission to be able to do. And so that's how I even come up with my business to essentially, before COVID, I wanted to do a passport initiative. So just helping fund young people to be able to have passports, to create that bridge for them to be able to travel and to see Africa beyond of what they see in like TV or commercials or whatever the case may be. Because during that time, they would just see a lot of negative ideas around Africa. So I was like, once I went, I was like, no, like this needs to be something that is intentional, of like teaching young people that Africa is beyond, what we see in media. It is a place that we can learn so much about ourselves. And so that was the whole idea. And I felt like a really great people who do that, people like Asa Hillard and Emerson Wilson and Naeem Akbar and so many others. Benjo Kanan.
And you got Kwame Nkrumah here very prominently in the chapter. We start talking about unity. So this is a global framework. It's just kind of Africa. It isn't just the diaspora. It's everybody. How and then I guess you already kind of previewed it in terms of the organizations you started and the work you're doing. How important is unity? You seem to devote a lot of time in here writing about unity.
Well, that's really important for what Emerson Wilson and Asa Hillard talks about. And it is like a recurring theme that we need as a community. And I'm like smiling because I was talking to Garima about this, the owner of the Sankofa, and he was saying something opposite. But I believe that unity is like,
in unity.
He does believe in unity.
The Negro can manage it.
He's cynical though.
We have hope. We have what it's like. We have your book. So unity. So disunity is not gonna get us anywhere.
This unity is not gonna get us anywhere. It's like, how do we form the correct channels to unify? I'm still, dealing with that now. Like, what is the best ways for us to build community with each other and keeping the conversations going, even when things get difficult. But unity is always the question. And I was at a Black Caucus event, like, I think this past week or something like that. We're talking about all of our problems and how one of my comrades from Michigan, Flint, Michigan, he was talking about, well, we have all of these problems, but when we're seeing, I think it was Rayvon Shaheed. Is it Rayvon Shaheed? He was just 17-year-old who was killed by the cops and shot in the back of the head. But the way that the media is talking about is basically saying, well, he had a gun, but he was shot in the back of the head. But even way, you've been having a lot of like hangings, but it's just not enough of us unified and coming together to basically, not only protest, but resist and to activate ourselves and create policies. And so it's like there is always that question of like, where is the unity? Of course, we know that unity is the answer, but where is it? And okay, I'm finishing my thought. He would say like, there's more people in the clubs, drinking and everything than there are people like doing the work, and so that is the solution. But it's like, where are we?
Well, that's always been the case. So I mean, that's why Dr. King, Robert Abnett had to go through all the speakeasies and after hours places the night before they decided on Monday to stay off the buses in Montgomery, because that's where the people were. So I mean, that's always been the case. But somehow we've always fought. I see there are a couple other places you might want to read from. We're going to open up so folks can be in conversation. And with that in mind, just want to. Well, no. You know what? Go ahead. Why don't you read from that next one, and then we'll pick up from there. You got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So here I'm at 446. If you want to see where I'm at.
Yes, ma'am. Page 446.
So this one I'm
chapter
talking
20.
more about.
Oh yeah, this is interesting. African studies embedded in American culture. That's chapter 20. Yes.
Yeah. So this talks a little bit about some more solutions, and I started off with a lot of the chapters I start off with are like some poetry that I've accumulated over the years.
This is your poetry?
Yeah, this is my
Yeah,
poetry.
because you clearly have footnotes when it's somebody else's. So every time I saw the italics, I assumed that was you. Okay.
Right. Did I say the poem? I don't know.
You gotta think.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna get a heart. Come on now.
Okay. Here we go. I am golden, bolding, molding into a better me, beholding the glowing, chosen by the ocean sea, and stolen, because I am me. Nook for nook, I got the luck you see. I stopped taking the photos a while back because they ain't nothing to be posing for. Click, what the hell is y'all posing for? Posting yourselves like you're losing your soul. They out here still hanging our people on trees while we using their systems to serve an illusion. It is all just confusion, giving in to the delusions of the stimulation of the white man. Our ancestors suppressed us so you can be their version of success and the version of death. Mass disappearances, ask where your people is. I am golden, bolding, molding to a better me, beholding the glowing, chosen by the ocean sea, and stolen, because I am me. Nook poo nook, I got the luck you see. You better get out, for they take a hold of your mind. It's called a possession. You will need an exorcism with all the elitism, classism, racism, and fascism. Our men and women be falling to the egotism. We engage in the system of capitalism. We steady dragging each other down, haven't mastered the art of love yet. We focus on the art of war, not realizing that a real opponent masters all their strength from the heart, champ. It makes me want to pull my enemy apart. I am golden, bolding, molding to a better me, beholding the glowing, chosen by the ocean sea, and stolen, because I am me. Nook poo nook, I got the luck you see. Sometimes I keep my eyes closed because I don't want to awake to the sick attraction and inaction of my own race. It is all a game, and I'm not trying to play. I'm not here to stay. I'll be on my way. I've had a lot to say, but at the end of the day, are you listening, or are you thinking about your glistening, talking about your christening? You immolated the devil's actions, liking his womb in, not seeing the beauty within. I am golden, bolding, molding to a better me, beholding the glowing, chosen by the ocean sea, and stolen, because I am me. Nook poo nook, I got the luck you'll see. What type of world was I left in? The mysteries of the inquiries, creating liabilities, got me up all night, plotting all the fights and battles unwon, wars that would go on. They be killing our sons and daughters and be thinking I'll forget. I am golden, bolding, molding to a better me, beholding the glowing, chosen by the ocean sea, and stolen, because I am me. Nook poo nook, I got the luck you seek. I will never submit. It ain't in my veins. You could be my guest. Continue to quit. Commit yourself to the insanity of self-inflicting pain, but it ain't no gain for me. I remember what they've done, and then I'll remember you next. Don't shun yourself away from my words, because, yeah, I'm talking to you. We meant to be one and having fun, pretending real bold, bright eyes, sore smile. What type of lifestyle is built upon lies? The virtual ones that are surely meant to die. I am golden, bolding, golden to a better me, beholding the glowing, chosen by the ocean seas, and stolen, because I am me. Nook poo nook, we will reconstruct your sea.
Wow. Let's stay in this creative vein, this cultural meaning making vein. You have some very trenchant analysis of contemporary popular culture. Now, the way you use language there, draw a distinction between your work in that creative moment and what we see in mass media, and how that is something that we have to guard against and combat.
Okay. Well, first off, nook poo nook, the line that I'm saying a lot, that in itself, it means I am that I am. So that's like a constant reminder of knowing, like keeping yourself grounded in who you are, because I feel like we live in a world of society right now where we're very vain. We always want to see ourselves, reflected, and it's not really about community. We can get lost in that, and that's what I've seen personally in this new generation, younger generation. Mentioning Dr. Shantella, correct?
Sure.
Like Dr. Sherman. Excuse me, thank you. She talks a little bit about eugenics, but I remember this line that was really profound to me. She talks about this line in the book Applied Eugenics that was written in 1876 that says the Negro has two senses, digestion and sex, essentially, and she basically compared that to what we see in media today, which is the same thing of how they're representing our women. And how they try to market things to us, which is usually around sex and digestion. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like my critique, especially how they portray African women in media. People who are guarding against that in our community, but we don't control the media platforms enough, so we don't see that type of reflection enough of, essentially like having the right figures that are doing the necessary work to have the good messages in our children's minds, because it is about the children at the end of the day. So
Absolutely, which is of course why we have the Dreamers and we have Sankofa and we have this event, and so everybody's streaming. Y'all share the word here because this is a very important, necessary work that you're doing to help us really understand that, and it's all the more powerful for being intergenerational, for you to be able to grasp this baton and continue in this work and extend it. So I'm going to ask one final initial question from me, if that's all right with you, and then maybe we can begin to open it up. So I see some hands already up. So I just want to ask you a question about your process. This is a lot of work. I mean, obviously Amos Wilson had a very small but very dedicated team at African Information Systems, which was able to translate this. For a book like this, which rivals in size something like Blueprint for Black Power, for somebody who is so at the beginning, I'm just talking about strictly in terms of size. You understand?
okay, I was about to say.
But also in content, I think, in a sense, because there's not an area really to evoke again, Neely Fuller and Francis Cress Wilson, in terms of life activity that you don't talk about. I mean, you talk about the military-industrial complex, and using your grandmother as the point of entry. You talk about lack of access to health care and what that means. You get very local when it comes to DC, and then global, talking about the United Nations and where it comes from, how that works with the International Money Fund, the World Bank, everything's. So what was your process to do this, and when did you do this while you were doing all this other stuff?
I think after I got out the military, I think my brain was all over the place after leaving, just because it was such a traumatic experience. So I was just trying to figure out where do I start? And so I just started documenting everything that I had experienced. So talking about the local experience, I ended up working with this marketing firm that did community work, but we had the housing committee as our client, and so that was when I was introduced to the comprehension plan, and I had to read a lot of the policies that they were ending up doing and being in the different wards. I was particularly in Ward 7 and Ward 8 when they were trying to roll out the comprehension plan, and I was listening to the community members basically reject the comprehension plan and saying, you guys, tried to do this in 1990 and we told you no. We told you in 1980, we still don't want it, because what we need is grocery stores. We need our housing cooperatives to stay afloat. We need, the basic necessities. And I thought that my firm would have listened to those things, but at the end of the day, it was the housing committee that was our client. So our goal was just to tell them it is what it is. You know what I mean? And so I felt very hurt by that. And so that made me want to document that experience and narrate what was going on as a citizen of the people that look like me, essentially, and you just basically be a part of that narrative as well, even though I was working with them. And then the same thing with the military. I wanted to document my experiences. I think it's very important for us in our community to make sure that we are documenting our lives and narrating what's going on with us and continuing that storytelling to our children. And so that was just what I was committed to, because I know that, this is going to be published forever. This is something that my children will have, but hopefully as I keep building upon the institutions that I want to, I'm able to share this with other people and also get them in the habit of narrating their own stories as well.
Yeah, it's excellent. Very much in the vein of folks like W.E.B. Du Bois. It says that you live in it, document it, so that we have a testament. So it's very, very powerful, and also a very powerful exercise in self-examination. So the memoir process as well is very effective. Why don't we open it up? I think the first thing I saw was in the very back. Oh, is this joint on? I was trying to get it on. Oh, man. All right.
I think I can be heard.
Yeah, we got the recording, Bob. We want to make sure.
Hi. Thanks for coming.
Over the record.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
And we could hear you for sure, but we will make sure.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brother's handling the business.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. These are only copies you got. These gonna go so fast.
I do have more copies.
Okay, I will
and
make
people
sure.
can also order them online, and I can send it to them.
Your
or order
website?
it through the site. Yes, www.nkosi-a.com.
Okay, here I am. My name is Ed Sargent. I'm from Washington, D.C. I've been here many times, and I know that this is sacred ground that I'm standing on. Dr. Carr, Ms. Stentz, I just want to establish that everybody here is sacred. You wouldn't be here. It's Friday night, right? I just want to do this message. We as a people, we put too much of a burden on that word unity. We do not need unity among all of us. No race has ever had total unity on anything. When you look at slavery, there wasn't the majority of whites who enslaved our people. We need what I call a critical mass, like this group here. A critical mass of us. That's where we need unity. You see the burden I'm talking about? Burden, we need unity. Well, we're living, it's a headache, isn't it? Right. We have to liberate ourselves from wanting unity and just unite with the person next to you. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
That's my message today. Critical mass.
Critical mass.
Critical mass.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. What you think?
No, absolutely. I agree with that.
Thank you,
That
Bob.
is something we talk about a lot, the 20% or yeah, I agree.
I think maybe
Go
that's what
ahead,
how
You're up front.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
There we go. And then we go, look, I'll give you this one.
Oh,
Okay. Hotel.
Jeff.
All right. I wanted to thank you guys for putting on this telling us and informing us about what's going on in the community. I would say that in terms of change, I think that people need near death experiences to change. Because you bring out the spirituality, a lot of things. If a cop could shoot you, you could die in a car crash, and things like that. It changes your perspective on the materialism of everything. It's just that you're here, And I think that a lot of things. I think that in order to change, I feel like it starts with us, and also you can basically change it through the parents. For example, the reason why I buy Hanes underwear, t-shirt, and socks is because my parents bought them, right?
Right.
And the reason why I eat certain foods because my parents bought them. The reason why, you know what I mean? And so when they eat better, because I think I showed them that movie Urban Kryptonite, and it was and then after that they started eating healthy on a healthier thing. So they started eating greens and things like that. So I think that the mind will be able to change, and then the spirit, then the mind, and then the actions that follow. So I think that's would be the best part to do that. So that's what I believe.
Appreciate you, brother. Any thoughts on that?
yeah, absolutely. They say, I like my favorite quote was by Frederick Douglass. It is easier to build strong children than to fix broken men. But I agree with also like it starts with the parents as well. So thank you for that.
Let's get
How you doing, everyone? Hello. Thank y'all for being here. Appreciate it. Very informative. This is to both the author and to you, Dr. Carr, because I know your work in the community has been without parallel. In terms of assimilating to play the game, right? We talked about the spook who sat by the door, and we see what time we're in where, Biden just pardoned his son in front of the whole world. Trump is, pretty much walking in, pretty thug life on his chest, basically, Does it still matter to play the game, so to speak, in terms of hiding how you feel, hiding what you think? Is it still worth it? Is it still valuable? Are we in a different time now where now maybe, I don't know, I'm asking. The Spook Who Sat by the Door is also my favorite book, and it's also how I came to learn and understand how to come through. I went to GW Law School. I'm from DC.
Yes.
Went to private schools.
Yes.
Went to DC public schools, so I know well how to assimilate. But in terms of assimilating on a higher level, because there are always new levels to assimilate, to acquire something and get it back. Is it still worth it to do that? Do we still have to? Is that still a tactical strategy at this moment?
Yeah, I don't think so. I guess the reason why I titled it "Play the Game: Hierarchical Assimilation" is basically to get us to pay attention to that like code phrase that we say to each other a lot, and to create a reflection for ourselves and saying like, what is it actually doing for us? And the whole idea is that it's not doing much, but the problem that exists that we need to find a solution for is being able to have long-lasting, stable institutions that we can uphold for generations and generations, and we don't have many of those. So a lot of times, even in your class, we're talking about, for example, the charter schools that it exists. Some of them exist to this day, but a lot of them are closed down because of funding. And talking about Howard University Middle School, it still exists, but that curriculum is gone because we didn't really talk about it. But the teachers, quit, got fired, whatever the case may be. So it goes back to the critical mass. Is it enough for us to be like, we're gonna do whatever we want to do, or is the move bombing gonna happen? You know what I mean? That happened in Pennsylvania, or are we gonna have more political prisoners? Like, we have to be strategic. So it's kind of like that duality, because at the end of the day, we don't have a military. You know what I mean?
Yeah, real threats to be moved against. What's interesting, as you write about ideology, kind of as a guiding kind of through line, wherever we find ourselves, and both of y'all are testament to this, that ideology doesn't deviate. So think about that in particular in relation to later on when we see this Sobukwe Great Soul piece. Here's a guy in South Africa, I think born in 1924. So he comes of age at a time when he's in the second generation of Africans in South Africa who an attempt has been made to create a kind of buffer class, which you write about in here. Even when you talk about Nkrumah, talk about his work in neocolonialism, create that buffer class of Negroes who can stand between the people we're oppressing and us.
Yes, sir.
Sobukwe then in school, Fort Hare, I guess what you might call the HBCU of that time in the region. But it's not just Sobukwe and Mandela. It's not just, Oliver Tambo and Walter Sisulu, or for that matter, Robert Mugabe. They take that education and use it as a weapon against. But what distinguishes Sobukwe from the others in some ways is this Negro is so uncompromising that they are terrified of this guy, because he's like, I'm going to use this education for the principle that the land is ours, everybody, not a bourgeois, but everyone. So they have to move against a single individual. I guess what I'm saying is that ultimately, Bobby Wright, remember the psychopathic racial personality, at some point, the bull recognizes that I've been chasing this red cape, but it's really the matador. So at some point, you become visible to the system, at which point they move against you.
Yes,
You name almost 100 young people who lost their lives through state violence, these funky ass police. They become symbolic of a movement that hasn't yet caught fire, in part because work like this hasn't been disseminated in a way. But you put this in a way that people can understand, and there can always be a spark. Finally, I would say this, because you write extensively about, like, say, how we don't have access to healthcare. We don't have, and you write about insurance. This white boy gets gunned down this week in the street, and there's no sympathy. Because what the reality represents is whatever he did or didn't do, whether he started some cabal or cheating on his wife, whatever led to his death in front of the Hilton in Midtown Manhattan, he's a symbol for the thing that we all oppose. But it just hasn't been the right flashpoint for it to surge up again. So I guess what I'm saying is that wherever we find ourselves, behind enemy lines, spooks who sat by the door, independent maroon spaces like this, the work that continues to build that critical mass, sometimes the spark that will unite it won't come from within. It'll be the thing outside. And at that point, which was the case in Sobukwe's cases, you read Feko's book on Sobukwe, or There Is a Tree, the biography of Sobukwe, or even his letters, his prison letters, at that moment, the thing explodes so fast that the people who've been oppressing us can't figure out how to stop it. And so we could, at any moment, that could happen, like Malcolm said, as long as you got the ingredients of explosion, you have the potential for explosion in your hands, and this is an explosive text. Not to put a target on your back, but it seems like you've done quite a good job of that yourself, but that means you gotta protect you at all costs. So I think that's part of it. I mean, no, but I mean, seriously, there's a fearlessness at the heart of this book. Were you born with that, or because you just fight somebody all the time? I mean, in other words, but not in a self-destructive way. And it kind of like, no, I'm gonna stand my ground. You did it in the military, you did it in undergrad, you did it as a middle school student. Where does that come from?
I guess my DNA, my lineage. I guess.
What you write about DNA?
Actually, yeah, and I will say that I wish my grandpa was here because my papa, Harold Lee Bethune II, he did a lot of great work in Louisiana and was a freedom fighter. So really, my DNA. Who knows beyond hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So.
Okay. Let's get come on. Yeah, absolutely. To the ancestors.
Let me say I'm Jeff Kennedy, for those who don't know me. I am so proud that I am so proud that you wrote this particular book, this journey that you've had. And
I will make sure you get the straight one.
okay.
I'm gonna move around a little bit.
And that last question, where did it come from? And you started talking about your grandfather. There's a concept, something called epigenetic memories. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of that. That we could have the memories of our ancestors for generations and generations and generations. And they've just started doing the medical work around that. There's a would-be anthropologist named Dr. Ernest Everett Just, who was a famous biologist at Howard University, who wanted to be an anthropologist. And he wrote about epigenetics. And we are doing some of the things that our grandfathers and our ancestors did years ago. We don't know it. And so I'm doing some of that work right now. I can't tell you how proud I am of you and the work that you're doing. And I want to thank Dr. Carr for coming out and leading this, especially the way I haze them around a particular issue that I'm not going to mention
Sorry,
right now. But this is what happens when you're not hung, as Carter G. Woodson said, at a very early age. Hanging happens in the classroom.
Oh, yes.
So when he was talking about Ida B. Wells, for those of you who are familiar with that conversation between Woodson and Ida B. Wells, it wasn't that he was saying that what she wasn't doing was important. She was talking about the physical hanging of people. The mental hanging of people in the classroom every single day of children in this country is something that has to be addressed. It has to be addressed. And this is what happens when you don't get hung in the classroom. You will come out and have a rare understanding of yourself, a rare confidence of yourself that will generate. She's so confident she wrote some stuff I wouldn't wrote because I'm like, Greg, I ain't put the target on my back right there at that particular age. Not that I couldn't. And people say, Jeff, how did you make it so far? Just for me. Jeff, how did you make it so far without putting the target on your back? I said, I read the work of those who did. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna write that. I don't think I'll be saying that right there. You know, spending years in divinity schools and theological schools and law schools, reading what people said that got them killed. From Walter Rodney all the way down to Fred Hampton. Don't think there isn't an organized, a very organized, right in front of your face movement that Donald Trump is very part of, a symbol of, that doesn't do that. And I'm gonna say this, and this might put a target on my back, and I'm gonna end up. The way to, it would be so easy to defeat Donald Trump is right in those books, right in there.
of course.
for the next 4 years. I don't know why people even sweating it. The way to beat Donald Trump is right in the books, right on the wall. And I'm gonna end it there.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I don't think that it's gonna put a target on anyone's back. We have to speak the truth to power. You know? We have to
There you go.
We have to make sure that
Everything,
we're
yes.
documenting, narrating, and speaking to each other and being in community. So there's no fear for me, but I appreciate your words. I appreciate you coming out. So thank you.
I think it's probably some folks who know Sebukwe's work. What is Sebukwe? It is meet that we tell the truth before we die.
Right. And
So-
what does Audre Lorde say? She says, if you don't tell them about your pain, they'll lie. Like they'll kill you and lie and say that you enjoyed it.
We see that with Martin Luther King every day.
I'm telling.
Yes. You say I'm telling. Love it. Yes. Oh, Jay. Oh wait. Go ahead. Who's next? All right. You got the mic.
You know what?
Hey, what's up? I don't know if the mic is on.
Hit that button. If not, I'll give you this. Thank you.
So, hey, great to see you. First, thank you for doing this work, this important work. Also, super proud of you and motivated by you.
Thank you.
My question is, as a young adult, what do you envision for your peers to do in bringing about the future you describe in your book? And what would be some immediate next steps?
For my peers, that's actually an ongoing thing. I was talking to Mr. Jones or Ms. Ballin. I try to stay in contact with at least like the teachers we went to school with, and I'm always thinking around. And I know you're trying to do some good work with getting like young African men together again from the school, but I think trying to not get disconnected. Oftentimes we normalize being disconnected, and even though like going back to critical mass, that's important, but it's like we at least need to like stay in touch and show that we do care about each other. So I think for me, seeing within our peers that we do have a care for each other, to check in and to try to update each other beyond of. I was talking to someone else about just the education system in general, like going to grad school and like all of that. Like it seemed like it was more so about just getting the degree, getting the paper to get the job versus to actually like create solutions within your community. So I would like to see our peers come together with all of the great expertise that we've accumulated over these years, come together and figure out, okay, how can we build something better? How can we, create our own buildings, own our own buildings and fix the housing crisis, and create more farming opportunities for ourselves and get more funding in a strategic way. Like for the Kamala Harris campaign, I think there was over like $2 billion that went to her campaign, and most of it went to like celebrities. How can we organize around getting them billions of dollars for the grassroots organizations, for Sankofa, like to build things out that actually are going to support us for future generations and our children for future generations? That's what I want to see. And right now, I'm in the space of wanting us to just learn more about ourselves, but also getting more in the mindset around financial security and like what that looks like. Because there are ways, and I think we are in that young age that we can plant really great seeds now in our youthful 20s for our children. So setting that up, that legacy for the next generations is what I think is the next step. And that's kind of the space that I am in now.
Let's do a couple more, and then we're gonna transition so she can sign some of these books for the people who get up here and get them right quick. Brother James, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, thank you for coming.
No.
On a personal, Dr. Carr, I actually have your copy of Bobby Wright's book, so I need to get it back to you. If you're looking for that.
I never forget, brother. I wasn't gonna bring it.
Got you.
Wow.
I don't forget a book. Morris Gardner said a book lent is a book given.
There you go. Yeah.
But I was thought that, brother. I appreciate you confessing it.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, first of all, I'm very proud of you and what you've done.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, very simply, what do you think we need to be doing to be prepared to be African in a post-American world? Because in my view, with a lot of things that are going on right now, not just with the election, but some other things that I'm seeing, the way I look at it is what white America has done. They basically hit the self-destruct button.
No question about that,
Right.
They basically hit the self-destruct button. And my biggest thing is, I honestly believe we can all stand still and do nothing. They're going to end up destroying this whole thing themselves.
Yep.
But we have to be concerned about what are we going to be doing when all that's said and done. So my question is, what do you think that we need to be doing to be prepared for that and to be able to live in a world that can be better than what we have now going forward?
Yeah. I am a strong proponent for us thinking about who we are within. So I try, like, it's not very easy because I'm a mixed up African lady, but I really think it's rooted in our DNA. So like figuring out who that family line is and starting with like your direct family, your roots, like who are they, right? And figuring out those stories and those histories as much as possible. And then outside of that, as you're doing that, which should be ongoing, a lot of times I feel like we're so disconnected to our African roots. Like I have comrades that will say, nah, I'm just black, I'm not African. I'm like, you're Gullah. Like they directly come from Africa, thank you very much. But those types of conversations are really important. And then once you get to a place of understanding who you are within and what that means and a level of like, how did you come to still exist, that resistance piece, is forming to the comrades right next to you and building intentionally to the people right next to you. And that starts off with just, really conversation and being genuine and authentic with them, but then figuring out how you guys can organize all those skills into one whatever you want to build, but not starting from scratch, but building upon what already exists, like investing into what exists, but coming together. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And for one, it's like giving back to a place like Sankofa, you know what I mean? Like, small thing, like we should have a lot of Sankofas, and this whole street used to be full of black businesses. Where are they now? You know what I mean? Like what happened? And the problem sometimes is us.
Say it again.
The problem sometimes is us.
Hello. Listen, good evening. I have to apologize to you because I've gotten here late. So I'm going to base my question on two things that you said. Greg Carr and I are both very ancient people, and you're not. Okay. But you talked about people working together and, contributing to this and to that. I'd like to know from your perspective, what sort of motivation, or rather, how do you think you can contribute to, or we can develop the kind of what might be called in the business world brand loyalty, or in the sociocultural world develop the kind of ethnic commitment to each other, so that we see ourselves not simply as becoming successful for ourselves individually or our individual families, and in aggregate that accidentally will lead to a whole community moving forward, but how for your generation do you see people wanting, what do you do to make people want to be together? Which is a very different thing than when you're segregated. Like I grew up in the Deep South, and we worked together and we had our businesses because we couldn't go to the other place. But then when the shoe came off to some degree,
Yes, sir.
guess what? We didn't have that brand loyalty in all cases,
Yes, sir.
except in one arena, the church. So, when the pews got bad, or the minister acted up, or was doing this and that, we got rid of the minister and we bought new pews for the church. But we didn't do that with our schools necessarily. Okay, in the old days, we sometimes had, like right here in DC, we had people with PhDs teaching it, not only Dunbar High School, but other schools. So again, I'm sorry, I have digressed. How do you see in your own mind, what do you see that will bring people together in the way that they want to be together, which is very different than just kind of acting together in your own personal interest. It's a different notion. And I don't know, I'm a little, I just got here visiting a sick relative, so I don't know if that was clear, but anyway, I just Good to see,
Thank you, Doc. Good to see you.
That's a great question. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out what that is for us, but I think that it would become, I'm curious to see if it will become progressively clear in the next few years. But one thing I think is a starting point is consistently asking ourselves, how are the children doing? Which is something I write about in my book, like, you know, caring about what we're seeing our kids have their, like, what are they modeling essentially? What are they listening to? How are they responding and talking to each other and themselves? So consistently asking ourselves that, and are we being the correct representations for our children, even if we don't have children, right? I think that's still an important question to ask as a community, and hopefully I'm thinking that that's enough motivation. And my whole idea around doing all of this was I wanted to inspire young kids to love learning the way that I did, because of I had a great teacher like Mr. Billy Shaka who created that inspiration for me to want to see more. So I'm hoping that creates like some type of motivation or catalyst for us.
Let's do one more, and then we'll transition. Yes, sir. You got the Thank you, Doc. Appreciate you.
No problem.
Yes, sir. Then we're gonna sign some books.
Hey, I'm Vince Williams from Chicago, and you were talking about the legislative conference. I was at that conference as a lobbyist from Illinois.
Awesome.
My statement, I really want your opinion about this. I was the chairman of the board of a hospital back home, and a brother for the very first time gave the graduation, performed the graduation ceremony for the residents. And while he was there, he said something. He said to those students, if you are over 35 and you meet somebody 19, make them your mentor. Meaning those of us that are older, we know a lot, but what we don't know is what you know from your perspective, having seen the things you've seen, lived the way you live, and have to deal with this world the way you have to deal with it. Because the things that benefited me aren't even available to you. So for me to pretend mine is the only way is not smart.
Right.
So how do you think we can figure out a way to create that mentor relationship in reverse with those of us that are older that don't want to be detached from our own? And I think I'm more concerned about our cultural gap than I am about our economic ones or complexion or how we feel about where we are in the diaspora. I think our community is getting younger and younger across the globe,
Right.
and we're not connecting. I was at a restaurant in Louisville, and I heard the sister say to her boyfriend, you know, I just wish them old folks would get out the way so I can get a promotion. And I'm like, well, why don't you get with me and figure out how we can create a whole new thing? You have to get rid of nobody.
Right.
But I'm just concerned that you know, want your opinions about whether or not you think that level of engagement could get us to that place of unity you spoke about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of talking with my elders and listening to them a lot, but also like just being in conversation with my elders. And I prefer this term that I was introduced to by Mr. Browder, and he says Jedi instead of mentor, because I think mentor has some other type of connotations to it, but Jedi is kind of like is it like warrior, cultural warrior?
Jegna is one of the words they use in Amharic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although Holly would say that perhaps those Amharic speakers may have a different context to that. But mentor definitely comes from, and you write about that a lot in the first third of this book, how language is important.
Right.
You start tracing mentor, you won't use that word again. But anyway.
No, but the point is like keeping intergenerational conversations going. I think is really important, and we're become. I don't know if a lot of young people, are speaking to their elders enough, or if there's some type of gap. And sometimes it can be like friction, you know, because someone thinks that they know it all, but that's just how human nature is. But encouraging conversation of learning about each other's experiences is something I'm always encouraging, and learning about people's narrative, because you never know what you can learn from both sides of the coin. So I would say yes to both sides, though, you know.
So I saw a hand. I know it's 5:17, and we have 5:30 to start the Sabukwe conversation. So could we just do two very quick things? Number one, we have to do this because this is the reason we're in this moment. Thank you, Nkozia, for this work. And let's give her a round of applause.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. And these copies we have physically here and the website, you can order them there. And before anybody else moves, I saw a brother in the back. I want to mention this because about 20 years ago, I was at the University of Tennessee one night for Children's Defense Fund, we go to Freedom Schools, and Freeman Rabowski, former president of University of Maryland, Baltimore County, was there. And he had put a math question out for about maybe 400 college students from around the country, black college students. And as people were trying to work out the problem, he said, look at all of us, all these black people doing math on a Friday night. And so, well, look at all these people in this space doing this work on a Friday night. This is the liberation work. But I think I see W. Paul Coates. Is that Paul back there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Can
Thank
we
you,
get
Mr. Coates, for
Paul? Can we get Paul to come up here for a minute? Look at him trying to sneak away. Is that Paul Coates? Yeah. Yes, please move that, bro. He said, no, but come on, Paul, come up here for a minute. 2 weeks ago, talk about spooks who sat by the door and playing the game. And 2 weeks ago in New York City, the American Book Foundation did something that we know is remarkable for us, but it's remarkable for them. They gave their lifetime achievement, their literary award, to this brother right here, Paul Coates. So, Paul Coates, you get this on the record, brother. So we're gonna transition so that Nkozia can sign these books. But Baba, could you say one word about the importance of this work?
Just one word.
Well, how many words you want? This is the man right here.
No, I have two things to
Yes,
say.
sir.
I don't have one word. I have two things to say. One, this is a very dynamic and bad system.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Really. Really. It took me about an hour and 30 minutes to get over here.
Thank you
I
for
did it.
coming.
But she did likewise. I think one of the last questions somebody was asking about dealing with getting information from the elders and what have you. One of the things I really admired, she hit me up about coming to Baltimore or about Black Classic Press, and I thought she was driving. Take a train over and what have you to come see and learn about Black Classic Press, and I really appreciate it. The other thing I want to say is about Greg. Like we don't have enough situations where we have learned. I'm not even call Greg an elder, but learned brothers and sisters that take young folks by the hand. Yeah. I was listening to how this sister's book is how many pages?
632.
630. Greg read that, In between everything else he reads, he read that book and he prepared for this to engage her so that he could in fact validate her place here on, in front of us. I just think that's in both cases. And once again, I just love the notion of being here in this liberated space. Yeah. This liberated space that Holly Mushikiana called into being, but that everyone here continues to support and makes it happen to us. So thank you all.
Wayne, check this out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no. I just wanted to mention because here.
So tomorrow at Thurgood Marshall, you have an opportunity to see one of the badder brothers on the planet, Wayne Chandler, who's in town. He's mainly from DC, but he hasn't been in town for about 20, 25 years. I didn't know that. He hasn't spoken. Wayne will be speaking on the book that we published. This is the 25th anniversary of Ancient Future, the book Ancient Future. Wayne is doing a presentation on Ancient Future and Beyond. So Tony Browder and I will be engaging him in a conversation initially, but then he'll be doing a presentation. Many people from DC are familiar with Wayne's work. He is not, I call Wayne like a time traveler. He is different. He's completely different than all of the other folks could come along, because even with Renoco, Wayne is in the ancient past, he's in the ancient East, he's in Asia, he's in Africa, he's in Mexico, and if you get him, he'll talk about it in a minute. And at the same time, he'll tell you what's happening now. And he'll tell you what's coming down the pike in the future. So he's like in all of those places, and he's a bad naturopath and martial artist at the same time. I mean, he's an amazing, phenomenal person, and we're going to celebrate him with him tomorrow. We haven't had him in this area enough. Thank you for
Oh, brother, always, man. That's
and that's the
institution
third
building
of
right
March, so that's from 2 to 6.
Thank you, Paul. Coach. Yes, sir. Thank you, Paul. Man, the man. I'm so glad. Thank you. Yes, sorry, brother. Yes, sir. Yes, man.
Thank you so much, Mr. Coates.
Okay. All right. Well, you should tell them, man. And then we're gonna.
So I'm gonna take one final image with the camera. It's gonna be a posed picture. So the best way everybody can support that, if you have a phone, if you're on social media or whatever, take a picture, post it up later. It'll help support the online cause, you know what I'm saying, the digital versions of the book. So I'm gonna go ahead and set up for that.
All right.
I'm gonna stand y'all up.
Thank you. And then y'all come here and get these books right here. And if you're streaming, www.nkozia-x, right? -a.com. Y'all already said enough. Okay. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Put this microphone down.
Hey, brother, you mind if I use this spot? Huh?
6 minutes.
6 minutes? Okay, this is it.
Let's know when you're ready.
All right.
This is serious equipment.
Okay, gotta get it. All right, here we go.
Oh, we're looking at
Yeah, we're looking right at the camera. And 3, 2, 1. All right, one more. And 3, 2, and 1. All right, now look out at the crowd. For everybody taking a picture out there, look right at the crowd. Yeah.
1,000-yard steer.
All right. All right, here we go. And 3, 2, and 1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Y'all come get these books.
They can get it on the front desk.
What's your front desk?
At the
Yeah.
front desk, yeah.
Okay. So should they take these copies and buy them?
I have another event. Nkozia.
Oh, I see. I see. How you wanna do it?
Do you want to sign? Do you want to sign? Is that
Yeah,
what?
yeah, but I'm saying like.
How you wanna do it?